Now, your chain rings are an ultra important part of the jigsaw of your bike, helping transmit the torque generated from your chain set through to the back wheel to drive you forward. Enough though of that physics lesson. Let's look at the actual chain rings themselves and basically the process of replacing them. After all, a worn chain ring is not only inefficient, but it's also potentially dangerous, as your chain could actually be dislodged and basically send you flying. So let's have a look at how to change them. So how do we actually know then when it's time to replace a chain ring? Because as far as I'm aware, there isn't a product on the market that you can put onto a chain ring and it tells you to replace it. So you are going to have to use your eyes for this one. So have a look at the chain ring teeth, and basically if they're looking very narrow and sharp and pointy, essentially looking like a shark's tooth, then it is in fact time to replace those chain rings, because you're wearing away and the chain is not going to be engaging correctly. Now, ultra fussy riders out there, and for those of you who've been riding years and years and years, sometimes when you put a new chain onto a worn or basically not good condition chain ring, you can actually feel that the chain is not engaging properly with the teeth of a chain ring. So that, again, like I say, is really for those really experienced riders out there. You can in fact feel it, but generally it could well be a bedding in process, because the chain is going to wear a little bit, so then it will go on to the chain ring. So possibly it's not time to replace a chain ring quite just yet. When actually looking at the chain ring though, do bear in mind that for an outer chain ring, some of the teeth are more than likely to actually have a different shape from the others. Now it is quite uniform, and they are designed like that for a reason, because they've got shifting ramps and pins to basically aid the shifting of the chain when you're using the front derailleur from one chain ring to the other. That is something to remember definitely on the big ring. As for the inside rings, the little chain ring, all the teeth on those generally do look the same. There's no shifting ramps or profiles, nothing like that. They all look uniform. Firstly then, let's look at actually how do you go about the process of finding a replacement chain ring for your existing one. Because believe it or not, they are not all the same. So there are different numbers of teeth, for example, as well as different widths to accommodate different drivetrain number of gears. And then you've got the whole conundrum of the bolt circle diameter. So that is basically the distance between the actual chainring mounting bolts. And then just to throw something else into the mix, we've also got different shapes of chain rings. Not something which we commonly see, is it? Now, if you've got something like this, so an asymmetrical style chainring, which is relatively new really to the bicycle world, you're not going to be overwhelmed with choices, which is a real blessing, because believe me, the choices of BCDs out there for these standard chain sets is pretty large. So simply have a look on the website or pop into your local shop, and you should easily be able to find out from the manufacturer what chain rings you need for that, without the hassle of going through the measuring. Now, most people out there, when making a decision process for getting a replacement chain ring, do actually just go for a like for like. So if you're replacing a 53 tooth, you put a new 53 tooth on there too. Generally though, as long as it's the same bolt circle diameter, you are going to be in a good state of place. You don't actually need to replace with the exact same model. Now, for the process of replacing some chain rings, you are going to need a few tools, but nothing too over the top. So generally for an older style chain set, you will most likely use a 5mm Allen key and then one of these. This is a chainring peg spanner. So basically these slots here go into the back side of that nut, and then the bolt is turned with the actual 5mm Allen key. Some of the modern ones come with a 5 and a 6 style fitting, so you have a 5mm and a 6mm bolt, and they thread into one another. And then others come with Torx fittings. So actually just have a look at yours and decide which tools you are going to need. Now, the good news is for this, you don't actually need to remove the chain set from your bike. Although I have in this case, because it's easier to actually demonstrate to you the process. So essentially, you're going to get yourself those Allen keys or the Torx wrench and basically undo all of the chainring bolts, put them somewhere safe, and also remember if there's any spacers at all to actually put those with them too. And remember the order in which the chain rings do come off. And when I say order, I don't mean the big and then the small, because, well, that's quite obvious, isn't it? I actually mean if there's any special weight. So in particular for the inner ring, generally you are going to have like a chamfered edge on the inside of that chain ring. So just bear that in mind. If you're unsure, take a photograph of it before you remove it, especially if you're replacing like for like, then you know exactly how it came off in the first place. Now, whilst those chainring bolts are out, give them, and also the nuts that are there too, a good clean, because you want them to be nice and easy to go back on. So just give them a good degrease and allow them to dry. Now, if you've got yourself a chain set like this, so a chainring pattern like this, that outer ring, that's only going to fit in one certain direction and one way, because, well, there's no way of fitting it the other direction round. So if you're fitting the inner chainring, just pay attention, of course, to how the existing one came off, as well as basically on the inside of that chainring where the hole is for the chainring bolt. Normally it has a little recess for that bolt just to sit flush against. Now, when it comes to fitting the outer chainring on basically a standard 5-bolt or 4-bolt chain set, so not one of those asymmetrical ones, but something a little bit more traditional, I guess you could call it. In most cases, or in fact every case I know of, you are in fact going to have the manufacturer and the number of teeth facing outwards from the drivetrain. So if you look at the bike from the side, you can easily see the manufacturer. Now that basically is there for a reason, and that means that the shifting ramps and pins, they are going to be able to do their job efficiently. So these different shaped teeth, as well as on the inside, that's going to allow the front derailleur and chain to move perfectly. Something else worth bearing in mind is this here. So this little tab here, essentially they will sit in line with the crank. So it takes up the gap in between the chainring and the crank arm. So if your chain was to derail, basically the chain is going to stop there rather than getting jammed in between your expensive chain set and the chainring. Now, inner chainrings, they too can quite often have to be positioned in a special place. So in this case, we've actually got some writing on the chainring, which is telling you exactly where to place it on the actual crank arm or the spider. In some cases, you just have a little arrow, and basically that arrow means you're going to have it in line with that crank. Now, writing on an inner chainring doesn't necessarily correspond with the writing on the outer chainring. So let's remember that the outer chainring, you read it from the drive side, whereas the inner chainring, you read it from the non-drive side. Presumably that's because sometimes some chainrings can actually be shaped as such that it would obscure the writing around there. Now, before you actually go about mounting your chainrings back onto the spider, firstly, ensure that the spider tabs are perfectly clean and there's no grit or dirt in there. Reason being, if you were to fit your new chainrings back on, that dirt or grit could cause creaking later on. And nobody wants a creaking bike, or in fact, for that matter, a dirty bike. So if you're going to do a job, do it properly. Now, once you've actually got your chainrings lined up correctly on the spider, grab your chainring nut and bolt combo, or sometimes just the bolt, remember, and give it a little coating of either anti-seize or grease, and then gently just actually finger tighten them to one another, or finger tighten it in place. Now, some manufacturers, they do recommend using thread lock, for example, on the chainring bolts, but I've never actually had a chainring bolt come loose when I've torqued it up to the correct number. Now, once you've actually fitted those bolts finger tight, you want to work around. Now, I prefer to basically tighten one, miss one, tighten one, miss one, tighten one, and then so forth. So basically, you're not tightening, because that way, if you had a very, very fragile chainring, for example, because some of them are available in carbon fiber, you could be doing a little bit of damage. So work in opposites or that kind of thing, or like a star pattern, but certainly not next to one another and torquing up to the maximum. And that's it. You're good to go out again and start riding your bike. Now, providing, of course, that you've not fitted a bigger or smaller size chainring or something like this, so one of those oval style, you won't have to touch that front derailleur or indexing settings whatsoever. If you have fitted some of those chainrings, well, that is a video for a different day. And I hope that you have certainly enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a big like, thumbs up, share it with your friends out there. Also, remember to check out the GCN shop at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. And now, for another great video, why don't you click down here for the latest GCN Tech Show.